So, hello everyone, and it's like April already, and the ChangeMakers has been quiet this year so far. But I'm delighted to be joined today with Reinhard Stelter. Many of you probably know of him, or at least know of his work. For me today, this is the first time I've been in direct contact with him, so I'm going to be learning a lot more about him with you as we have this chat. And I'm delighted that he's said yes to joining me here today. So, hello, Reinhard.
Hello, and thank you for inviting me.
Thank you for joining us. So I'm going to, I know you through your third generation work and much of your other work as well, though I probably don't know it as deeply as maybe you would like me to if you were to be teaching me. And so I'd love it if you could, tell us more about your history, like where you started professionally, and how you got to be where you are today.
This is could be quite a long story. So, but
Great.
to make it a bit brief, so I had a background in humanities and social science, and also sports science. So I have been teaching at the University of Copenhagen in sports psychology mainly, and later on coaching psychology since 1987. I'm now Professor Emeritus for a bit more than a year. That means that I still have affiliation somehow and some few students, and I still write and work. And I'm still, for the last 17 years, I'm a guest professor at the Copenhagen Business School, where I teach a master in it's called Master of Public Governance. So it's leaders in public businesses and organizations, and I teach them about the importance of dialogue in for their personal leadership. So
So you started in humanities, you said,
yes.
and I'm interested to know what you were doing in humanities, and even before you began in humanities, I started, my very first job was working in a plant nursery, like
Oh,
where I would
okay.
care for the indoor plants, and first time I ever come up against a big brown snake as well. It was a bit
Yeah.
scary, but
Yeah, I think it was. I mean, my father was a vice headmaster in a high school, and I think somehow I got this human aspects, and he has been in the Second World War as a very soldier, which I think really was a very, very tough time for him.
mm,
Because he was more interested in literature and listening to classical music. And so somehow I think I've been influenced by him. And he was also teaching Latin. So so that tells a bit about my background. And I think somehow I actually didn't know what I wanted to study, but I think it was clearly in my CV from my parents' side that I should go to university. So I ended up actually to study history, sociology, pedagogy, and sports science. And yeah, so to actually also to become a high school teacher. And so I moved to Denmark because I met a Danish girl in Germany, and we wanted to start our working life here in Denmark. So, and yeah, then accidentally things started to change. I was already interested in psychology, so I got uh, actually a psychotherapeutic education in the first years of my time in Denmark. And so my road was already paved when I started to teach in physical education students. I was the man for psychology. So I returned also, I got a very nice scholarship. I returned to university and ended up to with a PhD in psychology. And I think my path to open up for coaching came actually when one of our study organizers asked me to teach on a course coaching and team development. And I really had no clear picture what coaching is about. So, of course, I used my therapeutical education
Mm.
as a as somehow as a foundation. But I started to actually in 2002, I wrote my first book together with a group of others, which is a Danish book, which became a bestseller, Coaching, Learning, and Developing.
Mm.
And my foundation, my theoretical foundation was mainly in the field of identity theories and learning theories, modern uh, learning theories. And so in that sense, the ground was paved for me. And because of my more social science and humanity background, I also started after having written this book, I started to think, which was, I would say, more second generation coaching book, which was very much based on systemic thinking. And I was also further educating myself in narrative psychology, narrative coaching, narrative approaches, social constructionist thinking, systemic thinking, and so on. And but the what happened was that I thought, okay, coaching actually moved from the field of sport into organizational life. And I think in the beginning, coaching was a kind of Trojan horse to introduce psychology in organizational life. Because if we go back 30, 40 years, if you said you're a psychologist, people backed off and said, "Oh, can you look into my brain?" And so it was not an approach really accepted in the organizational world. So that was actually uh, my first thought. And but during the first century of the 21st century, the first 10 years of the 21st century, I think society changed very much.
Mm.
And I thought we also have to include a, a societal analysis
Mm.
in further developing coaching. And that actually led me to the idea of to change coaching to a much more collaborative practice, much more to an ethical practice, where the two parts are more collaborating. So it's not the old style coaching of the first and second generation, where the coach is a neutral person, more or less, but a collaborative partner, a fellow human companion. I'm talking about. So, and to really give more credit and more sustainability, you could say, to the conversation, I think it's also very important to to introduce issues which have more a value perspective, more an ethical perspective. And I think on this road of my development, I had the pleasure to work together with two colleagues, which have followed me for the last about 17 years. One is a professor in leadership philosophy, who's very much based on the work of classical Greek and mainly Greek and also Roman philosophy. And the other one is a woman who is an expert in Søren Kierkegaard. And Kierkegaard, or Kierkegaard, as we say in Denmark, is actually the first, you could see, the first thinker who included a very ethical perspective in his work, and um, also had the idea that it's the human, the person it's himself or herself, to really develop on an ethical ground. And so in that sense, I think I fit very much to also to your podcast here, which has the ethical insights as the major point of departure.
It's curious that you mentioned the two people that you've really mostly enjoyed working with and collaborating with, because that was one of the questions that was sitting solidly in my mind as you were speaking, as I was wondering across time who you've really enjoyed collaborating with. And don't ask me why that question came to light, but it did. So I want to know, what was it about that collaboration or those people that you really loved and enjoyed, and
Yeah, I mean,
what was the fruit of it as well?
yeah, I mean, one is my professor colleague. His name is Ole Fogh Kirkeby, and he reinvented Aristotle's protreptic approach and changed it to a more dialogical path. And there, and I'm also, of course, I think you can take a starting point in any coaching conversation which is more situated, where you
Mm.
talk about a problem, or your client comes with a specific issue, a problem, a challenge, or something. But what my colleague Ole Fogh Kirkeby does, he takes starting point in reflecting about an issue, about a value. So we could have a conversation just on the basis of a very abstract relationship reflection. We could talk about, what does courage mean for you? So,
Mm.
or any kind of other issue. And if you have a more uh, fellow human starting point, you can also more easily break up with this traditional relationship where I'm only the facilitator as the dialogue guide or coach. So in that sense, it opens up for totally new ways of learning, which is much more collaborative. And this is actually also the my starting point when I look back how I included learning theories, because modern learning theories, or maybe postmodern learning theories, are much more based on that there is no one who is the instructor who knows everything. But modern or postmodern learning theories have the idea of that you collaborate, that you build a group of people where you learn in relation to the task you are faced with. So in that sense, I also think that, the process of that I not only help a person to be more enlightened or more uh, clear about specific issues in his or her life or working field, so that we really grow together. Of course, it's still the situation that the coach or the dialogue guide, I call this person, is actually, of course, the driver of the conversation, has a special responsibility. But I can use myself to help the person, my client or my dialogue partner, to be more aware about specific topics.
It's curious because I don't know if you're aware that I've formed this Ethics Forum International, and we're launching this year some hour-long speaker-led dialogues. And just thinking about this modern approach to learning that you're speaking of, where people want to learn with each other.
Yes.
But I think there's some populations at least, or some
Mm.
fraction of people, I don't know how many exactly, but seems to me there's also a desire for people to be fed information as well. This is why
Mm.
we have people of known names that other people just hang off of every word that they say. They
Mm.
want to hear them speak, and rightly
Yeah.
so. There's many people with many good things and interesting things to say. But the learning doesn't necessarily happen just from that being fed information. So I'm thinking about these dialogues at Ethics
Mm.
Forum International, where it'd be one speaker saying about 15, 20 minutes of the topic that they're wanting to land. And then it's going to be a community dialogue from there.
Mm.
And so that's a communal learning. So I didn't think about the fact that I'd be creating a modern approach to learning by landing those dialogues.
Yeah,
But
you are.
so I'm just reflecting on that in real time as you're talking there.
Mm.
And so it's interesting in relation to coaching that it's taken a while for coaching bodies to grab hold of the fact that the coach has something to bring other than just
Mm.
being there and attending and asking questions. And that raises ethical conundrums. They have these codes of ethics that invite you to be a certain way or to
Mm.
land information. One of them I kind of laugh at because it talks about intuition, being assessed on bringing your intuition to coaching, which I think is a funny kind of idea. But I'm just thinking about what your thoughts are in relation to, you know, that person, that coach, that facilitator bringing their own knowledge and their own information to that relationship.
Mm. So what kind of impact that has? I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, coaching is not a normal dialogue where you just can bring everything. It's a give and take situation. But if you have these transformative dialogues, I'm more willing to talk about when I talk about coaching, and transformative in the way that we try to have an impact or initiate kind of transformational process with our client in regard to his or her identity issues or self-understanding.
Mm.
So in that sense, I really have to be careful when I bring myself into the conversation. I have to think about what might be something which I bring in from my life perspective, which may be to the benefit of my client. And so I have to be, this is the professional part. So it's not like a normal human being. If you are part in the conversation, you can just say whatever. And maybe people say, oh, that I don't want to listen to it or whatever, or this is interesting. So you never know. But I have to make preparations in regard to what could it be that might help the other to develop. And this is, of course, inspired by the narrative approach of outsider witnessing. I rather talk about that I'm able to give gifts to the other, or sometimes even receive gifts. So something where I can learn, and this receiving of something from my dialogue partner means that the dialogue partner feels somehow, oh, I didn't know that this would be helpful or would make sense for another person. So in that sense, receiving a gift can also be very helpful in the way that my dialogue partner can develop. And this is the professional part, you could say that. So it's not only, I mean, you also have to think about what kind of question would be helpful. So
Mhm.
here, of course, I'm asking a lot of questions as well, but this co-reflective process maybe more on ethical issues or on general life issues that really helps the person to develop on a very higher level, and it makes also him or her much more sustainable in further developing him or herself. So I think this is for me the most important part of what I call third generation coaching.
Mhm. Um, I love that you're speaking a lot about that you might be coaching around an ethical issue. I think we're doing that a lot more than we realize, and we're just not using the word ethics, and maybe that's why people aren't aware of it.
Hmm.
But I think it'd be nice if we all became much more aware that that is actually, it's not just about the code that determines whether you're your relationship to it
Mm.
determines, whether you're practicing ethically, but actually what's happening in the relationship itself and
Mm.
the conversation exactly is whether that's being coached through an ethical
Mm.
lens. And I think I wrote about that in one of my papers last year, actually. And to come to think of it, because I've just finished writing another one, which is going to be published shortly. So my mind is
Mm.
there at the moment, which is actually on contracting and consent and
Mm.
passing them apart.
Yeah.
Um, so you mentioned third generation coaching, and you have a whole range of work to tell us about. But what do you think would be your most meaningful contribution to professional life? It need not be just within coaching, it might be somewhere else.
I mean, obviously it started to really develop since I'm working together with these two people I mentioned in the beginning. But it's also based on what I said on the analysis of the changes in our social life, in our organizational life, in our societies that needs to uh, where the basis for another conversation is essential. Because I mean, if we only, I mean, everything is going faster. There's a German sociologist who speaks about acceleration, and and I think the more traditional way of coaching has been very much like to keep going in the way we are working. So the wheel is turning faster and faster. And this is not my idea. I mean, we really have to think about, so what is the meaning of life, or what is the meaning or the essence of my part in the working field. And so I don't want to be a person who just keeps people ready to move even more faster without even thinking about what they are doing.
Mm.
And sometimes so I'm somehow part of uh, providing also a kind of space where you can think and reflect about your life, about your yeah the essence of your participating in social life and working life and so on. So in that sense, and of course, sometimes there are also issues which need to, of conflict, of really difficult decisions to make, but they have to be based on ethical reflections also in the end. So, and this is what really is the driver for me. And if you talk about this more the higher levels of intentionality, because I di distinguish several levels of intentionality, where the lowest is actually goal oriented, the next level is purpose oriented, and the highest level of intentionality is about meaning making. And we have to move away from just looking on the basis where we focus on goals, which is the traditional way of working in coaching. But we have to really think about, so how are things meaningful in our life, in our working life, in our family life, and where it could be. So because I mean that's basically how we also develop a kind of happiness or satisfaction in our life.
Yeah, and there's a lot of work to support exactly what you're saying about meaning being so important. Um, and I recall listening to a speaker a year or two ago at a conference. It was a positive psych conference, and self-determination theory.
Mm.
And we were being told that the latest work on autonomy um, really impacts the other two
Yeah,
significantly.
yeah,
So
yeah.
it's interesting that you can work on autonomy. And I don't know why this is just thrown up in my mind right now, but trying to
Mm.
connect that to meaning making, that they're both strong, how you work with autonomy to then bring about meaning making and for you to be walking congruently
Yeah.
will strengthen ultimately your your foundations, the
Mm.
happiness of your life, I think, and that
Yeah.
can change from time to time. Maybe that's where my brain was going. It just went off on a little tangent.
But I mean, I think it's as important to talk about relationships. I think
Mm.
this is, I mean, you know, autonomy is, of course, an essential part. You know that you feel whole in some sense, but I mean, you can only develop wholeness or a way of feeling, get a sense of autonomy if you are in important relationships, and so in that sense. I wouldn't just highlight autonomy on this, and also, and the third of competencies is of course also important. And I think sometimes competencies are just reduced on, you know, doing something, be able to do something. But I think it's also to have an ethical stance uh, that makes you also feel somehow competent in leading your life in a way that you, or your work or whatever, in a way that you feel satisfied.
Yeah, and the rationale for why you do, being really clear about why you've chosen particular directions to go. So we're leaning into ethics quite a lot, which is kind of good. And I'm wondering about how you see that within your workspace and your own decision making.
The I think I need a bit of help for because what are you asking?
Yeah, so I'll ask again because it was a crazy question.
Yeah.
So I was just leaning into ethics more explicitly, and it's clear that you're thinking ethically a lot. So I'm wondering if you can share with us, we'll land it in something quite solid, is share with us an experience you've had where maybe the ethical conditions around it were really challenging, um, and
In
kind of
in
what the
in
outcome was.
in my own life, or
Yeah.
yeah, because I really thought about it because you sent a couple of questions beforehand. I think my hardest ethical decision I had to make was uh, uh, I have a daughter, and at that time she was about 11 years old, and my wife nowadays, and I was divorced from the mother of the daughter for almost 10 years, and of 8 years at that time. So, and I had the possibility to get a full professorship in Germany, but I was living in Denmark. My later wife, who I was already affiliated to, was working in Germany. And so I was somehow really split what to do. So, and at that time, it would have been a major promotion. Job-wise, you know, I dreamt to be a full professor. At that time, I was a associate professor, and also I had, you know, the feeling, yeah, going back to Germany would be something for me to go back to my original home country. And but it was also the promotion to something really fantastic. And I didn't sleep at that night because I was thinking, so what will happen to the connection to my daughter, who will still live with her mother I'm divorced with, and she will stay in Denmark. And in the end of the night, I actually decided not to go for the interview. And later I heard what happened. So, and the issue was actually that I couldn't go and be a proper father and be so much away, maybe come for the some weekends, and that was not my idea. So it was basically an ethical decision to make, to stop thinking about this and be yeah, it was more important to be a good father, and not just be thinking about my career. So it took actually another, I think in Denmark it took another I think 6 years before I actually became a professor here. So it was, it followed me a bit, but I never had the idea that it was a wrong decision. So that was really ethically based, and probably my hardest decision based on ethics in my life.
That is a lovely story because I don't think people think about ethics as arising in that way. They would just say, that's a life decision I need to make about whether I'm going to move here or move there. But in fact, there was a real tension there,
Mhm.
and therein lies the ethics of where you're
Yes.
going to go. It's a great story. And how's your daughter?
Oh, now probably she doesn't really know about this. She doesn't know about this decision, and I wonder whether I should uh, ever tell her about this in this way. Don't know whether I should share this podcast with her at some point of time. But it was a major decision at that time. But I
Yeah,
don't want to give her the burden that she had an influence on. Of course, she had an influence on my life, but I mean, it was my decision, and it was
yeah,
based on ethics, and it was based on a clear perspective also how I wanted to be a father. Just, I mean, it was already difficult enough to be divorced and
mm,
not spending time all the time with my daughter.
mm,
So, in that sense, I wanted to do the best out of the situation, and in that sense, my decision was clear, and I never t- had an argument later about this whether it was good or not. It was the best decision, clearly.
yeah. It can be challenging to be in different countries from those closest to you.
And I think, I mean, but I mean, to make this story also maybe relevant for, I mean,
Mm.
I didn't have a coach at that that night. It was
Okay.
actually a decision I had to make during one night. So I couldn't even talk to anybody really, but I had to make a decision to make a phone call and say next day that I won't take it. And the head of the evaluation committee was a woman. And I think that was maybe also a bit a lucky situation because I think in general, maybe women think more about ethics when it's, especially when it has to do with children. So I was happy that I could talk to a woman and make my decision clear because I mean, for them, it was also a disappointment. And later on, I met people on the conference, and they said, "So what happened to you?" So, so you were our favorite, and
Yeah,
so, but I think to make it to build a relationship to coaching, I think we also have to make clear that a lot of decisions people are making, or a lot of perspectives for their leadership, life in leadership, or in their life in the organization or in private life, it has to be based on ethical decisions, and we have to help people to make these decisions and help them to grow, and not just say, "Oh, what are the pros and cons?" I mean, because basically, the decisions you make about your life are the best when they are based on ethics and not on just rational thinking and cost benefit issues.
yeah, and I don't know that the coaching world necessarily sees coaching through that lens, that perhaps is their role as well. That's their ethical duty, you might say, that they are coaching through an ethical lens. But it's like other facets of coaching. It's like, then how can they really do that and become more awake to that if they're not developing their own ethicality, you might say?
Mhm.
So there's some work for coaches to do for them, for that to then translate into their coaching. There's a lot of work to do, I think. How many
Mhm.
coaches in the world? We've got to rev them up.
Yeah, I think there are still too many who just are focused on goals. I mean, quick
Yeah.
fix and keep on going and to keep the pace. And I think this is not just something. How much acceleration do we want? I mean, I'm talking about the art of lingering in dialogue. I mean, this is, if you linger, if you really uh, take your time, and I think when you stop, you know, making things faster and wanted to come to a conclusion, then things are happening with you. And this is also more elaborately described by the German philosopher Martin Heidegger. I think if you really pause to, and linger in a situation, linger in your thinking, then something will co come up in a totally different way.
That has me think about the age of AI that we're in and how AI can support you to work extraordinarily quickly. In fact, I think can become overwhelming. So you
Yeah.
need to maintain um, the agency around its use.
Mm.
But it has me thinking about what your thoughts are in relation to the coaching or even work practices that are leaning into the use of AI because it's a great tool. Let's not kid ourselves. I don't think it needs to be pushed out. But also then, humanity and what the lingering that you're talking about
Mm.
is are they building the engines of AI to allow you to linger, or is it always pushing you
I mean,
forward?
if you see AI, I mean, the answer comes like this. And I
Mhm.
think that is the first problem because I think you know, this lingering also, this making things slower, making, get a sense. I mean, I'm not very much in favor for coaching and AI in the form of direct dialogue. I think you won't get anything, and there are the first studies out now that you don't really get a improvement in it's maybe not the best word, but you AI can't really help you. They are really good in showing empathy, but I mean, there is no, you need this tension also between people. I
Mhm.
mean, because I only can touch you on the surface when I talk to you. So, and this being on the surface shows that we always are different. We have different life stories. We have different experiences. We have different ways of thinking. But we have these moments of being touched by another person. And these moments of being touched, there are some phenomenological thinkers, Fuchs and de Jager, they speak about participatory sense making. And participatory sense making is actually best developed in situations when you're sitting face to face across each other. So, and this participatory sense making doesn't make any sense if we talk about AI, because it's a language module, and they pick something up from what you are saying and make it sensible in some way based on all the input these machines going through have been going through. So I think we in for me, coaching has to be a human interaction, and it
Mhm.
cannot be supported by AI in a way that is really helpful because machines cannot be touched by something. And
Mhm.
it's also something. I see your face, I see how you are being touched by your own words. And this is something which is really important to develop. And I mean, if I speak about how can I give you a present or a gift in my way of relating to you, or how can I receive a gift? It's so important that I really, I need to be touched by what you are saying as my dialogue partner. And it won't help if I just, put something out which is based on, yeah, on these uh, artificial intelligence systems.
It's when you mentioned the receiving the gift or being touched by, and it has me think about people that are writing about listening and speaking about listening a lot, and I think it's great work, but I also wonder about then, what's the responsibility of me as the receiver of that gift in that relationship? And I just wonder if we're talking about that enough, the responsibility, which is the ethical conundrum.
Of course, but I mean, if some people has the trust that I can help him or her, I mean, it's a very responsible, I have to take this responsibility. It's the highest actually responsibility I can get from another person that they are giving me the trust that I can help and support their way of developing. So I would say there's nothing more than this. I mean, maybe it's even higher if you are a parent of a child. I mean, your responsibility is of course higher. But I think in an interhuman relationship, there is no higher responsibility that I have in this deeper relationships that coaching or transformative dialogues actually can have.
Yeah, and so we have to receive the gift. So to not receive the gift, I think, causes an unnecessary tension.
Yes.
And then what we might do with the gift, does it stay with us? Do we take it somewhere the for what benefit would we take that gift somewhere? And that gift could be knowledge if you're just talking
Yeah.
about dialogue.
But I think often it's also that's what I hear. But my wife is also working as a psychologist, and she tells me something sometimes also stories from her experiences that you know that people go back to her and they say, "Oh, my wife is always asking me, what would Shireen, my wife, would actually say in this situation?" So I
Ah.
think often, conversations continue. They people I'm related to in this coaching relationship, they would also maybe go, of course I don't know that, but maybe they think, oh, what would Reinhard say to this situation? So we get somehow a position where we are the reflective partner of when we are not in the position anymore, but we are still kind of useful for the relationships of their further development.
Mhm. You're falling off camera there, are you?
Yeah, no, I want to my computer had uh, s- I clicked it to the system here.
Ah, yeah, so it's got electricity.
Yeah,
It's a bit like Coaching Ethics Forum conference of 2025. I woke up to host and run that whole conference, which is two 14-hour days to no internet. So I
yeah,
had to plug up my computer to my phone and use 4G for 2 days to host
yeah,
the
yeah.
conference. That was quite an astounding feat, actually. So I'm just thinking, you have a great bunch of work. You've got the two books sitting behind you on your shoulder, which clearly you're very proud of, and rightly so. And I want to ask you about a legacy. If you were to be thinking about a legacy for your professional life, for the all of us, what would that be? And maybe you think you've already done that. Maybe there's more to come.
I think somehow I noticed that I get more contact from around the world from people and acknowledgments that that I really open up for a new perspective in seeing the relationship between the dialogue,
Mhm.
both parts in the dialogue, so that I give the coach or the dialogue guide a more somehow more inclusive, collaborative perspective. I think this is probably maybe my legacy. And I was happy that I actually found the title third generation coaching, which was actually based on that I once had to give a lecture, a keynote lecture on a conference here in Denmark, where I got the title The Landscapes of Coaching Here and Now, and I didn't know how to structure the whole session because I
Mm,
mean there are so many different kinds of ways of coaching.
yeah.
So I had these three generations, which at that time I called just perspectives. So the
Mm,
first one is, you know, that you have a goal orientation or a problem focus. The second generation is that you imagine new futures, change of perspective, which is very much based on systemic thinking and solution focused approaches. And then third generation coaching, uh, which I later called third generation coaching, which was the third perspective, which is more a reflective space. And a
mm,
reflective space includes that we are co-reflecting partners. And this is probably the legacy I can give to the coaching world, which luckily now it's getting more attention because people can see society is moving forward and forward and acceleration is progressing and we need to have and the world is going more and more crazy so that people who are in their full consciousness and have a clear mind they know that ethical perspectives become more and more important to really be guidelines for our actions.
mm. So is this the fourth generation? You're going to write us a book about not coaching ethics, because that's just such a broad name,
Yeah.
but coaches coaching using ethics as their lens to coach as opposed to just focusing on themselves. So I work on the development and you can work on what they're doing in the coaching.
Yeah. I think maybe this is the what my colleague Ole Fogh Kirkeby actually tries to do is to really move third generation coaching even a bit further
Mm,
to where it's more an abstract conversation where you focus on a ethical issue or a specific idea and have a, a conversation which is not connected to a specific situation. Maybe you could say this as I call it maybe a third generation plus because it's still, you know, there's this
mm.
uh, co-active or and collaborative perspective that the co-reflective part is really also important in this more abstract ethical reflective process.
Well, you've just made me think about a webinar I gave last week, and it was to over in Japan. And I was talking, and at some point, I thought to myself, this is probably sounding too ambiguous for them now. I feel like I need to land it in something solid. And I'm now questioning whether that was me needing it to land in something solid or whether it was the audience. I don't know which one it was exactly, but I felt that I needed to do that so they could like apply it more. And
Yeah,
that's what I worry about. I love the ambiguity. I was later told, no, we loved going off into these crazy spaces,
yeah,
but for me, it still felt important that it landed in
yeah.
something tangible for them to nut out and work with.
But I've actually just been in Japan three weeks ago. So and I think there is they honor each other much more.
Right.
So in that sense, they have really a much more ethical perspective. Maybe it's has also something to do with obedience, but still their ethical position is much more developed than in a lot of Western countries. And the funny thing is that my book, The Art of Dialogue in Coaching, will be translated to Japanese.
Right.
So they are actually there's a group of people there who want to work on third generation coaching for their whole educational coaching program. So and that was a really surprise because they just took contact to me and I had no idea what I was moving there. So that sense, I hope the legacy is moving on.
Lovely. That's great news. So good luck with that. So as we clear to the end of this chat,
Mm.
what do you think what sort of final words would you like to impart with on us? Any wisdom?
Yeah, I mean, what I really appreciate that with you also as a person, we share something which is very much important, and I really can hope that we both and the communities we have, that we get more influence in a world which is more in despair than
Mm,
ever. And it's really terrible what is happening, and we have to strengthen actually the perspective of ethics in all our ways of acting in the world, and be yeah, fellow humans to each other. So that's something would be my message to you and to our listeners and to everybody.
it's to embrace ethics. Let's
Yes.
not be frightened of it. I think I explained it the other day because someone asked me a question, and I said, well, we speak about people looking at life through rose-colored
Mm,
glasses, and I said, I think I've grown to look at life through an ethical lens, and you can equate the same positioning. So it'd be great if we could all do more of that, all of us.
mm.
But thank you so much for the chat.
Yes.
I've enjoyed it very
Yeah.
much, and look forward to sharing this with
Yeah.
everyone when it's ready.
Yeah. So, and I hope we can stay in contact with each other. And
Yeah.
bye bye to everybody. Yeah. Bye bye.